Welcome back to the Sweat Elite podcast. It's Luke and Matt with another episode of Training Talk, January the 28th. We are recapping the last week in training. And of course, in this first half, which is on the main feed, we'll talk all about marathon training. We're actually going to speak about Steve Magnus and some of his better quotes that Luke and I have come across over the last year or so. We often share some of Steve Magnus's insights amongst each other, and some other friends do as well. Until we do the training recap, which is over on the private podcast feed for the shareholders. If you'd like to join us over there, the link is in the description of this podcast. But Luke, thanks for joining. How's things?
All good, man. All good. I was saying to you there that yeah, the house is a bit more quiet with you and Reem gone, and Valentina especially is missing you guys, and Reem especially. And it's good diving back into it like normal, diving back into the 100-mile weeks and the big sessions, marathon sessions, and the easy 6:30 per mile pace runs, recovery runs, and all that good stuff. I'm feeling great.
So the reason for the bit of a giggle at the end of that conversation was Luke's been getting a little bit of heat on the Strava. I'll let you take over. What's been happening over on Strava, Luke? What's the go with your easy pace running? All of a sudden, it's pretty quick.
Um, Yeah, I don't know. I've just been feeling good. And I guess, I mean, we've talked about this so many times on the podcast in terms of easy running and RPE, rate of perceived effort, exertion, whatever term you want to use for the E. And yeah, that's literally what I do for every easy run or recovery run or whatever term you want to use, the non-workout days. And I don't know, I've just been feeling really good lately. So my watch has been showing 640s, sometimes 630s per mile for those 15, 16, 17 mile easy kind of medium long runs. And people are heated about it on Strava. They're not liking it. They're not liking that uh, I feel good going those paces. They want me to feel beat up and burned out and run down, and I don't feel any of those things, and so I'm kind of confused. But I'm sort of saying that as a joke, right? Because obviously it doesn't bother me. Like we joke about it in we have all these like Matt Persick, obviously that listens to this. We're all in a group chat, and he's getting the biggest kick out of it. He's making all these memes, and they're really good memes actually. He's making all these memes based upon people's reactions, and like it's hilarious. We're actually getting a good kick out of it. But that's the joke side. But the other side to it, and I think this is actually probably a good segue into Steve Magnus and to a lot of his mentality and his style. Just like, yeah, I just feel like effort-based runs are just so invaluable, I think. And that's why my runs look like that day, it was like the day after the half marathon, right? I ran a half marathon.
This was the day that set it all off.
Yeah, this is the day that said it all. Ran a PB, ran hard, obviously, but I felt good. And you know that specifically because
I was there.
not 20 minutes or 30 minutes after the half marathon, I saw you on the course and ran a K or more at your pace, maybe a bit faster to try and get you to catch me. And I felt grand. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like that might be another topic of discussion. Like maybe I didn't empty the tank, maybe I don't know, whatever. But either way, the point is I felt good. And then the next day, woke up, still felt good. And you got on the bike with me. We ran 15 miles and I wasn't even looking at the watch, really. I was
I
just with
can
you.
confirm that to be true.
And I remember there was about 2 miles left to home. And I actually said to you, I don't know if you remember this. And I was like, I was like, the pace is a little fast. People are going to freak out about this on Strava. I said that as a joke. I didn't actually think people would literally freak out about it on Strava because it was in like the 630s or whatever per mile. And but yeah, I don't know. I just look, I get the idea that, you need these easy runs, you need these recovery runs, sometimes look at pace. But like if you're running out there and you're feeling good and you're chatting with your mate and having a laugh and everything's conversational and everything feels good, it's like why would I get obsessed about a number on the watch as well? Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Why would I just automatically just like, I feel great. We're chatting. It's conversational. We're laughing. Everything's grand. No niggles. But then all of a sudden, oh, slow the bike down. This is not cool. This says 640s. This should say 710 or 720 or do you know what I mean? And it's just like, oh, I've never been that type of runner or that type of person, and I don't think I ever will be. And so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think personally the easy run pace that you do is weird. But the only thing I would agree with any of the people that are out there questioning you, of which, I've seen most of those posts, most of them seem to be coming from a good place. Some maybe not. But the only thing out of everything you just said, which I still think is a little bit odd, starts with you finishing the marathon with me at 5:25 mile pace and doing 1K. Because when I race a half marathon, of which I haven't done a lot of half marathons, but I do remember very clearly after I ran my official half marathon PR, which was 2 years ago in Seville, 66:46.
Yeah.
I don't think I've raced one since, actually. I might have raced one or two since, but either way, I couldn't cool down at any faster than 8 minute mile pace that day. And so when you were running next to me in the 25th mile at 5:25 mile pace, filming me, by the way, and you're on the footpath for anyone that wants to have another go at us. I was actually thinking to myself right then and there in the 25th mile, I'm like, how is Luke doing this? Like he just ran a half, and at that point I didn't know how fast you ran, but I assumed you ran a PR or at least very close. But it turns out you did. You ran 70:10. But what would you say to people that question the fact that maybe you just simply are not racing all out, and then why? If that's true, because that it seems to start there. Because most people could not do that in their cooldown, and then most people could also not go out and run 15 miles or 24K. And I can definitely agree with you on the fact that you did not push that run the next day. It was easy. We were talking the whole time, and I actually wanted you to go faster because I was freezing and I wanted the run to be finished. So,
Yeah.
so, anyways, back to the question. What would
Yeah.
you say to someone if they're like, "Are you racing all out then?" And what? How are you recovering so quickly, seemingly immediately after the race, within minutes?
Yeah. I'm just not a pussy. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, those are fair questions, and we talked about this, I think, on Sunday ourselves in our chat. And I get that. And I was finding it hard to think about it when you asked me that, because you did ask me that. And I was like, I don't know, it's a good question. And you know what helped me, who knows is the correct answer. I'll never really know. But here's what I think maybe. So we were on the Discord. This is not an intentional plug at all. This actually genuinely came to my mind. We were on the Discord chat that we have for everyone that's a shareholder. Um,
Keep plugging. Keep plugging. They're going.
and I think was it Michael?
Yeah.
He just typed in there about his 10K. It was Michael, right?
Hmm.
And he was a bit discouraged, saying like he felt like there were some things that felt a bit off. He wasn't sure if it was undertraining, overtraining. He couldn't put his finger on it. And I think I helped him establish something that, based upon my own experiences, where like maybe he hasn't done enough 10K specific work where he really started to spin the legs and bury his legs into that lactate buildup that you need at the last, you know, 2 miles, certainly the last mile of a 10K, say the last 2K. And it seemed like to him a bit of a light bulb moment. He's like, oh, you're probably right. Like maybe I need to bury more of those fast 400s, 200s, stuff like that. And maybe that'll help because obviously he's in good shape and he probably did a lot of threshold work, etc. And the reason I brought that up is because I think it relates to me in the half. Because when I was going that somewhere between five, before I kind of emptied the tank in the last 2 miles, my miles were somewhere between, I think my fastest mile was like 517 or 518 per mile. And the slowest one was in the headwind at like 523 or 524, right?
Hmm.
When I was in that range, like I said, with the exception of that little 200-meter stretch where my legs got a bit tight because of the wind and I snapped out of it, with the exception of that very small stretch, I felt grand. And I felt like I could push a bit more, but then maybe not at the same time
Mm.
because the pace, while aerobically I was fine, my strength. I felt super strong. I felt, do you know what I mean? But if I pushed just a few seconds more under, say, 5:15, I think the wheels would have fallen off.
Mm.
And I think it's because I've been doing so much hard grinding marathon specific type runs, big threshold type runs, LT1 stuff, some LT2 stuff for sure. And then a lot of those medium long runs, just very marathon specific stuff where I feel like, we'll talk in the shareholders club portion, my run on Saturday in Belleville, a big
Go on.
meaty 22 mile, 22
You would have
mile
dropped
run.
me on this run. I wouldn't have been able to keep up. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's true.
I felt grand, man. Like, not grand as in like it was a piece of piss and I would have been chatting and we would have been laughing like we were that day you were on the bike. Not like that. But grand as in like I never felt like I was going into fifth gear. Probably not even too deep into fourth gear, really. I always like, and when I finished the run, I was like, I could do another 10K like that.
Mm.
No bother. Maybe more. And I think it's because it's that marathon. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think it's that. I think that's what it is. I was just always in that zone and I really had Drew in my mind, like, hey, don't push in the red too soon. And I was quite worried in the race because, like I said to you, I was very worried that it would go wrong because 2024, so many races had gone wrong for me. And of course, that was in the back of my mind. I'm sure that's part of it. I was quite worried there. Um, and so yeah, I think were all things. And could I have run faster if I dropped it a bit sooner? Possibly. But
Mm.
maybe not as well. Maybe not as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I hope that answers it.
I think your answer is 100% correct. Now, the question in my mind is because having a think about, so we want to get onto Steve Magnus's quotes because I've got a few rippers and I want to talk about them. So we'll basically continue most of this conversation in the shareholders club, but to sort of tie a bow on this as an introduction to it, I think what you said is 100% correct. And now the question in my mind is, okay, based on your 22-mile training run on Saturday, where you averaged 5:37, which is 35 and a half K at 3:30 per K, which is basically your marathon PB pace, 2:27 marathon pace for almost the full distance. Yeah, a couple of stops, but they were just toilet stops, drink stops, whatever. I don't think that would have really made a difference, the stops. So in my mind, it's like your efficiency at LT1 and LT2 at the moment is extremely good, much better than I've ever seen it for you. But it seems like your lactic production or your ability to produce lactic and run at 5K, 10K is your weakness at this point. Even though it's not a big weakness, it's the weakness compared to the long stuff. So now, in my mind, with 4.5 weeks to go until Osaka, sorry, now it's 4 weeks to go, less than 4 weeks to go, do you now do more of Clayton Young, Conor Mann style speed, 12 400s for them, 61, probably for you, 64, 800s for them, 204 for you, 213, 214, like hard, real hard, longer rest. I feel like that's going to fill in the hole for you. But then I wonder, do you need that? I don't know. That's something for you to decide. But it's interesting for sure.
Couldn't everything you just said, I think, is on the money as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I have thought about that. Literally, what you just said is like you're inside my brain. We haven't even discussed that. Like I am because we talked about that forced down week slash time off.
Hmm,
100% next week I'm doing it.
good.
100%.
After that 22 miler, you're probably like, yep.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, but yeah, definitely doing it. And more so because not because I need it in terms of my legs and my body or my mind are fatigued. Like honestly, it's not that. It's more like I feel so confident now in the shape I'm in
Hmm,
that I'm like, take the foot off the gas here a bit. Don't overcook it. Because because even if you do feel good here, there's a slight risk there might be something overcooking in there that you don't realize. So yeah, take the foot off the gas. So I think I might do that. And I think I might start the week off next week by doing something like that, a bit shorter, faster, and then get into the down week. And then I actually have uh, a 10K race on the Saturday that I'll probably jump back into, that I might do.
that's
Uh,
2 weeks and 2 days before the race.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so. I think I might. Yeah, I might start doing a little bit more stuff like that, sharpening stuff, because yeah, I feel supremely confident now in my LT1, LT2 type work, and I'm not stressing about that anymore. And yeah, maybe it would be a good idea to start sprinkling that kind of that Mance Young Ed Eyestone type work, and why not? And at the end of the day, I think now is a time for probably little experiments like that, because I don't think I need many more 20 plus mile grueling long runs.
No,
And so, yeah, you might, yeah, I think you're onto something there.
I think you're exactly right. Maybe that workout too that they do, which they put on YouTube at least once, maybe several times, where they do like, I think it's 8 miles at like steady pace, and then they do like
Yeah,
four
four
twelve
by
hundreds, like
mile.
really hard.
Yeah, they call them fatigue miles, I think is the term they use. Yeah, they go 8 miles at it's not even fast for them at
No,
all.
5:30, 5:20, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think it's like 5:30, 5:20 pace, and just beat the legs up a little bit on the roads, get a bit hilly, and then straight onto the track and just rip 4 by a mile. Yeah.
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 And
I like the idea of that. Might do something like that as well. Yeah.
they normally do them in like 4:15 to 4:25, I think, which
Hmm.
would be probably 5K pace. Yeah. Well, that's around 13 low, 13 mid. Yeah. So that would basically mean what's your 5K pace? Well, you probably aim to run 14:45, something like that. And then, yeah, maybe around that pace. Yeah. I like it.
Okay. Yeah, I like it.
Cool. Well, we promised to talk about Steve and his favorite quotes. So I'm going to start with one and we can just sort of talk about a little bit about it. These are some of our favorites because yeah, I mean Luke and I follow most of the influencers out there. We're not going to talk about how we feel about some of them, but Steve Magnus is one that well, at least in my eyes, he's really one of the ones to pay attention to if you really want to. I mean, this sounds stupid, but I'll say it. If you really want to improve your performance, Steve Magnus is one to listen to because there's a lot of influencers out there that I feel like are probably a little bit better at watching if you just want to be trendy and not really improve your performance. I won't say who those are, but the first one I'm going to talk about is Steve Magnus's quote, which was 8 weeks ago. Are you using workouts to predict races or workouts to prepare for races? There's a difference. Workouts are designed to improve physiological and psychological capacities to race. If you are trying to run certain times to prove you can run X time, then you're missing out. I've been fortunate to work with a number of sub 15, 20-ish 5K women, and if you're compared their best threshold workout, you see a range from 4 miles at 5:30-ish pace to 10 miles at 5:30, all hard efforts. Some variations in other workouts aren't predictive across all athletes. It's all in how you manipulate the variables given the individual athlete you have standing in front of you and the desired adaptation. There are no magic workouts. There is no best workout to improve VO2 max or threshold or your 5K or whatever. The point of workouts is to vary the stimulus to adapt. That means 4 by a mile at X pace might be too great, too much, or not enough. Some might need to do 1Ks, others 2Ks, or vary rest. So, what do you think about that quote?
I like it. It's a lot. I wish I had it in front of me to dive in. I can't find the exact one. Um, I
I'll send it to you
guess,
on WhatsApp.
yeah, send it to me and then you give me your 2 cents just so I can digest it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I basically preach this all the time in the Sweater League Coaching Academy. And it's to make sure that you're keeping an eye on pace in training because at the end of the day, we always have to balance this whole I have a goal. I would like to run a marathon in sub 3. And so then you have to work out, okay, well, what pace do I have to do that? And that is 4:15 per kilometer, or I think it's believe it's 6:52 per mile or 6:51. And then you can become, if you're very analytical and very into numbers, you will start to really dial all of your training into that specific pace. But then you'll realize early on, if you are starting at a fitness level that's not quite at that pace, that if you try to run all of your workouts aiming at that pace, then you're often overreaching in training and you're doing things in training that are far harder than what you need to. And then that will put you potentially into a hole. So if I
Yeah.
say, okay, I want to run 2:16 for the marathon, that is 5:14 per mile or 5:12, 3:13 per kilometer. And let's say I'm in 2:30 shape. If I start to do everything at the 2:16 pace, my workouts will not be anywhere near as effective as if I actually run them to effort because if I'm not already in 216 shape and I'm in 230 shape and I start to think, okay, my marathon pace has got to be 313, which is 305 for threshold. If I start doing thresholds at 305, okay, or 5 minute mile pace when I'm not really quite close to that fitness, it just doesn't work. Like you start to overreach in training, you start to not run at the right intensities, you don't get the right threshold effect, and it's just yeah. And I think it's a tough thing to juggle nowadays because the amount of people that are coming out with YouTube channels and Strava thing, and I'm included. Like, in fact, I would argue I'm one of the biggest culprits of this in putting out a specific goal and being like, I want to reach this goal, as opposed to training for a marathon and just see what happens. I've been putting out a goal and chasing the goal, and I've actually shot myself in the foot a few times in phases of training by doing things at that goal pace when I'm not ready for it. So that's the best way I can expand upon that quote because I have been in this sport for 18 years or slightly more. And the amount of times I see people when they start to dial into their effort and not necessarily chasing a pace, when I see them do that for an extended period of time, they almost always tend to improve faster.
Yeah. No, that's it. No, I think, yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there, honestly. I think essentially what he's saying is a couple things. It's what you just said in terms of, you know, be mindful. You can be mindful of goals and stuff like that, but you need to be very tuned in with effort and see if you can get there. And you just need to be, I just feel like so much of his stuff, especially this, it's about security, right? And being mentally secure. And he's essentially saying, like, look, you need to be okay with the idea that maybe this one is not a sub 230 or whatever your goal is. Maybe not this one. Maybe down the line, but maybe not this one. Maybe you get out there, you work hard, you push your body, and if your PB is like 233, maybe you fall under 233, you get 232 or 231. It's like maybe this one sub 230 would be a bit much. And and if you're secure in that, if you're able to say to yourself, yeah, maybe not this one, then you'll probably have one of the best builds ever because you're not chasing paces. You're not worried about um oh man, I didn't hit that what's sub 230, 543 per mile, right? I didn't hit 540, didn't average 543 per mile in these splits on my 4 by 5K. Like, and then you start to spiral, this happens, that happens, and it's a dangerous game, like it is. And everyone, I myself included, has been guilty of it. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about like, okay, yeah, this one I averaged 545. But man, I felt great. I felt great not chasing paces. So therefore I smashed it. Do you know what I mean? And as soon as you make that kind of mental switch, then you'll see a physical switch too. And so yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about that. And then I think he's also saying another thing there. I think he's talking, a lot of people always bring up Kipchoge's thing about how he never really goes more than 80% effort, right? With Kipchoge's um, idea of, he doesn't go more than 80% effort and he's dialed in and all that good stuff. And yeah, I think he's talking about that too. But I will say that there's a lot to be said for definitely that, dial into effort, be secure, all that stuff. But I think for like weekend warriors like us and people that listen to the podcast, non-pros, non-elites, etc., I think there is a lot to be said for every once in a while just going out there and finding lads like I do, finding lads that are faster than you, fitter than you, stronger than you, and just trying to hang on and not worried about paces so much. And every once in a while having a bit of a hands on knees session. I think people like us and people that listen to the podcast do need that every now and again more than the pros. Every now and again, so we can see where that ceiling is, you know? And I think it's about finding that balance.
I like it. The next one I really enjoyed was actually, it's one all about zones and zone two training, but the actual caption is probably better than what he put in the picture. So Steve says, this is 8 weeks ago on Instagram. Zones can be helpful, but they should not be treated as rules of thumb, not laws. Too often with novice and intermediate athletes, I see them treated as laws, They panic and freak out if they enter quote unquote zone three on an easy run. As a coach and exercise physiologist, I'm just here to say that from a physiological standpoint, all zones are arbitrary. That's right. There is no clear and distinct line from a physiological standpoint. Even lactate threshold is not a concrete line or pace. Zones are there to help us categorize training. They can be helpful, but don't obsess. There's not an easy run I've done in my life that I've glanced down and thought, my heart rate is out of zone two. I'm in trouble. Just a massive piss take. If it's a day where I'm if it's a day where I'm feeling good and the primary point isn't recovering, then go for it. So like it goes on, but that's the main point. And in the picture it says, for most people, you don't need to worry
Don't
about
need
if
to do
you're
it.
in
Yeah.
zone two or not. Yeah. I think
That's
this is
hilarious. I actually,
gold.
I didn't pull up the one you sent me. I pulled that one up myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the picture, it says you don't need to worry about if you're in zone two or not. You just need to accumulate a lot of time exercising while being able to have a full conversation. That's it. Lots of easy, consistently over the long haul. The most precise zone doesn't matter for most. Whoa, look at that. I
Maybe you
want
need
to
to
read that
forward
again
maybe you need to
for
forward this to
people.
the old
I
mate that's
want to
been
read
questioning you.
read this paragraph again for people at the back. You just need to accumulate a lot of time exercising while being able to have a full conversation. And that the best runners and coaches have always told me that. Conversational pace. Conversational pace. If you can have a full-blown conversation for the entirety of the run, you're grand. You know, don't be worrying and stressing about um yeah, the times, the zones, and I spoke in depth without seeing that fucking meme and that post at the beginning. So yeah, I'll let you take this one. I feel like I've already hit the nail on the head with this one.
Yeah. Well, another thing that comes to mind here is another one of our favorite influencers is Stephen Scullion, maybe for slightly different reasons, but he does produce a lot of very insightful and, in our opinion, intelligent content. And I'll never forget one video he did. It would have been about a year ago, and it would take me a while to find the exact one. But he was training in Ireland, he was doing a workout, and he was warming up, and he was filming himself basically talking on his warm up. And I'll never forget, this was really interesting because for a very long time, I've heard people say, and I even saw it yesterday on someone's Strava. They said, "Oh, I ran and my Garmin or whatever it was telling was in the garbage zone. It was in the dead zone," which a lot of people believe is a zone where there's no point in running. Which you could argue is somewhere between easy pace and marathon pace. A lot of people believe that zone is useless, but it fundamentally is not useless. It's actually pretty beneficial if you do it sparingly. And I'll never forget, Skillian said, I do most of my training based on science, but sometimes I throw science out the window because I've learned some things that I think work that science says don't work. And he was talking about exactly this. And it was basically steady state running, which for him would be so his marathon pace is about 4:55 or 5 minutes, and his easy runs are mostly between 6:30 and 7:30. For him, that would probably be like 5:30 to 6. For you, that would be like 5:45 to 6:15. And he was saying that he sometimes does some runs in that zone. And what's also interesting is when I interviewed Ryan Hall a few months ago, he said that he ran a half marathon. I believe it was Houston before he broke his American record in the marathon several months later. He ran relatively poorly in the half. He ran 102 something. And then he went back to training for a few months and he started doing all of his easy runs kind of fast. And then he ran 204 in Boston. And I've seen a bunch of examples of people doing a lot of like easy runs almost in zone three and works out very well for them. And so it's interesting. And I say this to people I coach all the time. When it comes to easy running, try and vary it. Try and vary it. Try and sometimes go real slow, sometimes go steady, sometimes go easy. Just run. Just run to how you feel. And sometimes that will be so and because you've been feeling really good lately in training, what pace has come out has just been because you felt good. And that's the point. Yeah.
100%. Yep, that's it. Go to feel. Don't overanalyze it. Don't freak out. Like, definitely, it's good to get your workouts in and hit paces and hit precise laps and, get this 5K at this pace and average this time. Absolutely. That's important. But for runs like this, that this post is specifically talking about, what people would call zone one, zone two, just go to feel. It's
Mm.
just, I feel like it's just really black and white. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Like, don't freak out about it. But, I don't
My
know.
last one I'll share before you're welcome to share any, although I've got a fair few here, is literally just what we've been saying, but I'll finish off with this. He posted this on Threads 2 days ago. The best skill, this is just like repeating what we've just said, so sorry, but I have to say it because I brought it up. The best skill you can develop as a runner is learning to run by feel. If trained, it's your most reliable barometer, more than heart rate, pace, VO2, etc. Learn to listen to your body and distinguish the signals. That's all he said. So there's not much to dive into there, but I mean, he's always saying this, and I've thought about this for ages. And I'm just really glad that there's more people than just me and a couple of others, like that have a sort of an audience, so to speak, that are saying this because it's becoming a lost art, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like it. Man, he's a legend. He's a
Mm.
legend for a reason.
Yep. Any that you have in store? I know I kind of sprung this idea up on you like 1 minute before we hit record, but
I'm looking at a few here, and I mean, obviously the big trend is he does preach this a lot. Like I'm looking at a few here that I pulled up, and a lot of it is a very similar message, and it really is. It's like not to get too worried or worked up about the shiny things that are out there because there's so many shiny things, so many gadgets, so many, zones, so many different ways, and the double threshold, this and that, and his method is just why I love him and I think why you love him is because we're very similar as well. It's just like that stuff is cool, and he's not telling anyone, and we're not telling anyone to not invest in any of that stuff. And if you like that stuff, that's good, and that might help you. But don't let it cripple you. Don't let it become a crutch, and don't there's just so much to be said about the guys and the girls that go out there and they just dial into their body because at the end of the day, it's the body that's doing the work. It's not the watch. It's not the shoes. It's not the this and the that. The body's doing the work. You know what I mean? And the better you're able to like dial into that and make that connection mind to body, you're just going to be so much better. Not just in running, like in so many different things, but especially in running. Um, and And then I feel like it all goes back to, again, security,
mm,
having that security where, uh, I know I don't want to put them in it. You can put them in it if you want. There's a track club out there that prescribes a very specific, like hour-long tempo
that's
every
pretty
week,
specific. Yeah.
right? Well, that's pretty specific. Yeah. Every week. And look, the reason why that's probably a really bad idea is not physically, it's mentally,
Yep.
because how many people are going to be like, okay, I did this exact 60-minute tempo last week and I averaged 530 per mile, right? I'm just going to put out a random number. I averaged 530 per mile. Now, a week later, I have to average sub 530. I have to. Otherwise, I'm going backwards. And then the week after that, I just snuck under. I got 528 per mile. Now I got to go 527, and then boom, boom, boom. That's impossible. That's just you're playing a losing game there. And I bring up that one to just bring up the idea of like the runner. If you forced a runner like Steve Magnus, someone that had his mentality and was secure, you can tell he's a very secure person in himself, and I'm sure he was like this in his running. Um, if you forced him, I'd be willing to bet while he was in his prime every week to do that, he'd be okay saying this week is a 520 per mile pace. And then next week, oh, I feel a bit beat up. I did weights there the other day. My quad's a bit tight. I think this is a 540 per mile pace one. I'm okay with that. Going backwards this week. And then maybe next week I'll pick it up again. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you need to be able to do that, you know, get that connection between mind, body, dial into the effort, and then it all kind of comes together with a sense of security that you need to be able to build yourself. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, referring back to that 60-minute tempo thing, I've said many times that is a very effective workout
right,
physically.
right.
It's great. But you nailed it on the head when you said if you're doing that every week and you're someone that likes to see improvement, you're going to be stuck into this mental rut of always feeling like you have to improve week on week. And as we all know, paces can be massively differed by weather and shoes and how much sleep you got the night before. And especially a run like that, like fueling would play a big role for most people. For me, if I did a 60-minute tempo run without any fuel during, as opposed to one during, it would be a difference of a few seconds a mile, I think. So yeah, it's really important to understand that stuff. And yeah, I just want to be clear that physically, I actually think that's a pretty effective workout, but mentally, it's just terrible to do repeatedly. Yeah,
Yeah, that was my only point. Yeah, the
yeah,
mental side.
yeah,
Absolutely. And of
yeah.
course, the mental and the physical are so closely linked and connected, especially in
Very.
run,
Oh
especially in
yeah. Yep. Any other Steve Magnus gems we can finish off with? I see here he's taken the piss at influencers, saying that most of them don't know what they're talking about. Steve Magnus, he knows what he's doing, this guy, doesn't
What
he?
is it? Say that one. Give me that one.
Oh, I came across it and I've skimmed past it now, but he said something like, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Most influencers basically have no idea what they're talking about, and you're better off looking at a high school track coach for their opinion because they know just enough to know the basics, but not enough to know that what they're saying is dangerous. And I think he's more referring to like them preaching to run a specific, pace in training or whatnot. Because, yeah, I mean, look, we both know one influencer in Chicago, nice guy, does a lot of good content, but at one point he was preaching the only way to improve is to never get unfit. And I saw that and thought, man, when I ran Indianapolis in 220, I had 6 weeks off like just before it. And that was like the main reason why I improved so much. So that's not the best advice. So, um, and while that's not necessarily wrong advice, it's just that it doesn't apply at all to all circumstances. Never.
Yeah.
So you can't be saying that as a general rule when it's just not true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the last one, I think this will probably wrap it up because it actually makes sense. And I think this one really, I like this one. I've seen it before and I just came across it now. He just says, I'd hate running too if every day felt hard or moderately hard, even. Hard workouts are enjoyable because they're occasional. They allow you to challenge yourself and mostly succeed. If they're every day, they demoralize and demotivate. You know, that always, like I've seen that one before and I love that one. And I think that one kind of that sums it up perfectly. Just what is it? Is it Nick Bear's coach, the Bat City guy? I can't remember, but I think it's him, Jeff Cunningham. He likes he's like a Southern, I think he's a lawyer as well, so it makes sense. So he likes his little catchy catchphrases. But I think his one is basically like, oh, what is it? Consistently good is better than occasionally great, you
Mm,
know? I like that, and that's kind of the same message. Just show up, put in the work, put in good work, show that you care, and then show that you care consistently and can build those blocks instead of, ripping a mad one, one week and showing it off to Strava and whatever. And then you've just buried yourself in the hole and you can't re-emulate that and do it again. And yeah, I kind of like that. I like that message.
yeah. No, I also like the message. Jeff Cunningham is he's great on camera, that guy. He's always fired up,
Yeah.
isn't he?
Yeah, totally.
I'll never forget actually Indianapolis when I was running next to a couple of guys he coaches. I saw him multiple times running next to us on the side of the course, just screaming
Yeah, yeah.
at Mitch Evans and I'm blanking the other athletes he coached with me, but either way, yeah, it was funny. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of Training Talk on the main feed. We're going to switch over to the private podcast feed now, where the Shareholders Club tune in and then join us on Discord and talk about anything to do with training and racing. If you're a self-coached athlete or if you've got a coach and you'd like to join us over there, it's only $10 a month or $99 a year to join. And Luke and I are in there every day answering questions and chatting to people. There's some good conversations right now about nutrition and about 10K training and racing, also marathon training and racing. So if you'd like to join us, the link is in the description of this podcast. It's sweatelite.co/shareholders. Thank you for listening in otherwise, and we will speak to everyone next week.